Hello, welcome to Feedback, episode number 18. So today we are joined by two incredible polymaths, George Lewis, who will be talking to us with Sam Pluta about two pieces that Sam wrote for us entitled Tile Mosaic and Seven Systems. Don't forget, you can always send questions ahead of time to feedback@yarnwire.org or join the live chat on YouTube or Facebook to submit questions in real time. All right, well, we're excited you're both here today, and I'll turn it over to George.
Wow, well, thank you very much, Ian. This is an exciting moment to talk with Yarnwire and Sam Pluta. Known all of you for a pretty long time, and very excited about being a part of this. I mean, I don't know where to begin in one way. I mean, we haven't really, some of you in the audience, if there is an audience, you never know, out there, are you out there, have heard these pieces before, but maybe you haven't. And so it might be nice to just hear a little bit of one of the pieces. I think between the two, my preference would be to hear Tile Mosaic, a little bit of that. And then I could ask you something about the process and other things that would be interesting for people. How would you feel about that?
Awesome.
Sam, how would you feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So just any part of it would be great, because the whole thing, it brings up a lot of interesting questions, which I think we'll hear as we move into it.
Perfect. All right, here we go.
Nice.
I had the desire for that to go on much longer, but that's a good place to start, really. Sam, at times it sounds like sort of very interesting water kinds of sounds. The first thing that occurred to me when I heard this was the word tessellation. You know, you get layers of things on top of layers, but they don't really layer as much as they jump cut. You'll be sort of one area and then you have another area. I mean, it adds up to something, and there are these sort of auditory icons that emerge, and after a while you hear the same ones, and it's like becomes an old friend, and then you hear another one, and eventually they all become old friends. That's how I hear this piece, or at least a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. So the formal structure of this, and I think it's really awesome that I'm talking to you about this, because on your Rainbow Family, the record that we're putting out coming up soon, you talk about the formal structure that you had to create in order to create the phrase structure of Rainbow Family, which had to do with like come up with an idea, and then repeat the idea or don't repeat the idea, move on to the next idea. Repeat the idea or don't repeat the idea, move on to the next idea. And I think that what this piece adds to that, and this is independent of that because I didn't even know that in when I was writing it, is here's the idea, repeat the idea, go on to the next one, maybe repeat it, maybe don't, go on to the next one, and then I can go back to this idea, right? And I can basically have this object, and the objects are very I'm trying to make them super blocky. So they're really that with block ideas, right? So it's like he'll play this structure in that way. And I think it came out of listening to things like Cecil's music, and then at the same time programming the computer to, in other pieces, to try to create meaning out of phrases, or create phrases out of sonic ideas in like improvised electronic music. And I think it's interesting that I kind of came to the same conclusion that you did, 30 years earlier, that these ideas kind of can exist. And I think the only thing I add is just the memory of ideas that did exist, and trying to like be able to look at something that I already had and bring it back. And then if it comes back enough times, then maybe I'll let it go on for a really long time and live its full life, and then go on to a new idea. So I think that's where it comes from, is this kind of combination. Another composer is Feldman. So Feldman and Cecil, and then computer programming kind of fuse into this like kind of rotational compositional structure.
Well, it's very interesting. Just as a total aside from this, that might be relevant. I've been working with our old friend Damon Holzborn,
Of course,
who worked on so much of the Voyager project and also Julia Hyland Bruno, the neuroscientist who works on zebra finches. And it turns out that zebra finches use a very similar kind of structure to what you have been talking about and what Rainbow did in order to create what Julia is calling improvisations. So it's another way of saying that great minds think alike in music and nature. I just wanted to find out more about the electronics. I mean, the electronics are very subtle in this and very understated. I mean, not to say that. I mean, sometimes your electronics can get wild, but this is very, it's very understated in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in both these pieces that we're going to talk about today, electronics, and in this piece, it's really minimal. I believe it's only just there are these two pails. They're like metal pails, like garden pails. And I went to the Ace Hardware in Greenpoint, no, not in Greenpoint, in East Williamsburg. And I just kind of like went around to the pails and just kind of flicked each of them, found like a third between two of the pails, and bought those two pails. And all they have is a little transducer on the bottom, and the transducer sends filtered, I think, pink noise through the pails. So that's really it. That's the whole electronic element. And that electronic element is quite acoustic, in fact.
Well, this says here brown noise.
Brown noise.
Does that mean like that's like Brownian motion, right?
Yeah. So it's a little
sort of like kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. It's not white noise where like the entire spectrum is full. So it's not bright. It's a little bit warmer and softer.
Sort of filtered within a tessitura.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's and then but it just goes and then it goes off. And this is something that came up also in the other piece when we get around to that. The idea of using samples in this way, where the samples come on and they come off, and they inform the texture without it's a cliche to say the integration of the electronic and the acoustic elements. I think it goes past that cliche toward just a sense of a single sound world where
Yeah.
you're not really concerned about this sort of idea of hybridity so much. It's just that, well, these are the elements, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's you got all these things here: bongos, temple bowls, glockens, and then somewhere there's brown noise in there. It's just another one of just another aspect of the sound world.
Right. I mean, writing for percussion, it's like the original gangster of electronic music, right? It's just there's so many options. And with this one, I think I went into the studio with Russell and I just like went around and he literally opened every box and like took everything out and showed me the thing. And I just, I know. Why did we do that?
You chose one of everything.
I chose one of everything. And it is a little problematic because the log drums, for instance, are tuned, and I need those pitches, and not every, like that, most log drums don't have those pitches. Not like every log drum doesn't, most don't. So it's a little bit of a problem in that way. But yeah, I mean, and the in this piece in particular, I'm going for like these really like delicate pastel-y, like light colors. The tiles themselves are tuned. I remember I was living in East Williamsburg, and there was like a tile distributor or something that was within walking distance to my house. And I like went over there, and the guy's like, "What, you want to see the tiles?" And I'm like tapping on the tiles, trying to figure out which one makes a sound. So it's just like trying to find all these like really delicate sounds. And like you said, the electronics are just one of the delicate sounds that I found. I also didn't want to write a super elaborate electronic thing that they couldn't play when I wasn't there, because that could be I've written enough of those pieces to know that that's a drag. And both these pieces can be performed without me, and have been. So that's good.
Well, it's nice that you think about the ensemble. Because I mean, this is a real band we're talking about. Yarn Wire is a real band, and bands go on tour, bands go on the road. Bands have to carry carloads of stuff.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I guess I overlooked that part.
Well, it looks like most of the stuff is small, so you didn't do too bad there. I mean, I'd like to ask the band, what was the nature of the collaboration? Anyone wants to talk about that?
I think this was part of this early commissioning project we did, that we either officially or unofficially called Composing New York.
It was official.
It was official. All right. We're going to keep hashing that out, I think, because I've said the same thing every time. Oh, we found it. Nice. And it was, we commissioned Sam, Alex Minchek, Kate Soper, David Franzen, basically our contemporaries. And I think the idea behind this one and a few others were to try and get pieces for one piano. To address a logistical problem that we were seeing on the horizon. And then, using instruments that we had. I think it just kind of started from there, right, Sam? We were just like, do you want to write something?
Right. It was, and the idea was piano four hands, because you had been, you'd gone to like different universities or, venues around New York. Having two pianos in New York is a nightmare, as you probably are fully aware of. but even elsewhere, and so I think the idea was like, piano four hands, then things could get played, because most places have a piano.
Yeah. But now we need buckets.
I was also thinking about the percussion for this piece is one of the things are these four pipes that are in groups of two that are slightly detuned from one another. And for a while on Google Maps, on the street view, there was a shot of me walking in front of this computer music center, holding one of the pipes that I had bought at the 420 hardware on 125th Street. I never got a screenshot of this, which is really stupid, because it was awesome. It's like just me holding a giant metal pipe on Google Maps. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. My timing is very bad in these things, but I don't know how long we go on this, but is there time for hear a little bit more of this piece, or should we move to the other piece?
I think there's
Maybe
totally
you could
time.
tell me.
Yeah, there's definitely time.
Yeah.
We have a bit more time to go to another part of it, so we could hear more of these icons and how they interrelate. Maybe move. You know, it's terrible not to be able to hear the whole thing, but hopefully that'll be available in some way soon, right? That's the idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's another bit.
Wow, Sam, I listening to that again and remembering the experience of playing it, and this was kind of one of my first real experiences getting to know you actually as a person as well as a musician. But I'm really struck, especially sort of retrospectively, by how delicate this music is. Because I really think about your music so often is really energetic and maybe even bombastic in some ways, and this is it's such a beautiful contrast in a lot of ways.
I mean I think for a couple of years prior to that I had been using this formal structure and that I was discussing earlier with George, but the in order to create maximum contrast between the objects, I would have to like make these like big giant walls of sound, and these big walls of sound that were like that ended up being like super aggressive, not because I'm angry, certainly not, because it's more about joy than anger. But then I was thinking about it, and so I had gone to DC to visit a friend, and he worked at the Dumbarton Oaks, which is in DC. It's owned by Harvard right now. It's like a research institute. And he worked there. So we went and checked it out. And then he was like, oh, behind this house, there's a Chagall tile mosaic. So like we looked in the fence and checked it out. And I was like, oh, that's odd. Like these, I knew Chagall's paintings, but I don't think I knew his tile mosaics. And so I found a book, and I went to the library at Columbia, and I found this book on Chagall tile mosaics, looked through it, and I just thought like how that was like a perfect frame for how I wanted to do this piece, which is like he was able to create this art in the 20th century that's not like horrible and scary, even though the 20th century was terrifying, as is right now. And the
21st century.
21st century is pretty scary
Even
too.
Scarier, yeah.
Right. But then these like little tiles are just like these little like colors, and it's all they are. And yet when you zoom out, you see this whole beautiful Chagall painting. Like if you get far away enough, you can't tell it's tiles at all. So that's what was like the trigger for the idea is like, oh, I can do that thing that I've been doing with my other pieces. And then I go on, and Seven Systems actually uses at the beginning at least uses a lot of the same ideas structurally. And I can use like these really delicate, gentle sounds as my material instead, and kind of just like, it's like you have these tiles and just like empty out the color and like pour in new colors and see what happens.
Well, we also have a question.
Oh, please go ahead. What you were saying? Sorry to interrupt.
We have a question from our viewers for Sam about this specific piece, and I think it came up in relationship to the earlier excerpt, but you can hear it in this one. And so this question is from Joseph, and they say, "That was so beautiful and engrossing. Everything about the brief appearance of the harmonica surprised me." And that was a harmonica.
Yeah.
You're right,
Yep.
Joseph. Sam, can you say a bit about how you conceived it working compositionally? I guess in terms of instruments, yeah.
Totally. I believe everyone has a harmonica, or is it just the pianists?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the most of the percussion there's these. It's like all these thirds. It's not so. That's the part of the reason why things sound very delicate and beautiful is that there's just like thirds between like the tiles, thirds between the pipes. There's a lot of thirds in the piano part. There's a third between the analog drum. Like, so there's all these like relationships of thirds. And if you blow on the lowest notes of the harmonica, it's a major third, right? But then usually it would be two harmonicas playing at the same time. So it'd be like a stacked major thirds in different combinations. I think it's 4 different harmonicas and they happen in different combinations. And so sometimes they're alone and sometimes in combination, I think. That's a good question. But yeah, so that was the, I just wanted to add another pitch element. I mean, most of the time I do not think about pitch like this, but this piece really dives into pitch as a serious compositional thing, and the harmonicas just fit. I just think they're awesome too. I mean, what a great sound. I'm here in DeLand, Florida, where my wife is doing an installation using like 180 harmonicas. So clearly,
I was just thinking of that. So there is something there.
Yeah, exactly.
And what does she call them? Harmonibots.
Yeah, this one's harmonitrees.
Harmonitrees. Oh, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So and these things breathe, and they breathe on their own.
Totally.
Sort of like, very scarily in some ways, very eerie, and so there's some relationship there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is, but I mean, like Minchek uses harmonicas all the time too. So I think it's a common language. It's this instrument that kind of anyone can play. Most people can't play them well, but you can just kind of pick it up and make a beautiful sound, and it's really an awesome sound.
Well, or related to that would be Christian Wolff's use of the melodicas.
Right.
He's always has that, and I've been doing performances with him periodically, which is a great opportunity for me. And he always has this melodica there, and you hear that. And we were in Stavanger, Norway, and they were doing a version of Burdock's, which is and that little sort of sea chanty that they use the melodica for. And it's very eerie, and the harmonic, when it comes out, it's always singular. You don't expect it, but then once again, it becomes an old friend, and you realize that it was always already there, as the philosophers like to say.
I also think another instrument that has this function is the accordion, which I use all the time. And part of it is that the accordion and maybe the harmonica, they fuse so well with electronics. So part of like the fusion with electronics has to do with the instrumentation. And, harmonicas just feel like electronic instruments, and, because the weird double reeds.
Yeah. Well, it's very odd because it makes me think about, the very earliest sort of percussion pieces, of course, the famous one, ionization. And then, 20 years later, the guy is doing poem électronique, right?
Yeah.
So suddenly you start to see that there's suddenly the use of the electronics and the use of the percussion contribute to this overall new kind of sound ideal, integrated sound ideal in new music. And then you guys come along, I'm talking about yarn wire, and suddenly it's sort of like opening the door for everyone to really not feel poorly about saying we need 2 grand pianos here.
That's right.
And say, oh, of course.
If only.
Are there? I don't know. Are there more? What should we do? Should we? There's a lot to say about this, but I wanted to make sure we had enough time for the other piece. I don't know how much time we have left, but I mean, the 7 systems, or you're calling it 7 systems or 7 modules, Sam? I couldn't figure out.
7 systems. Yeah.
Okay, but could we hear a bit of that too? I mean, we won't, and then you could tell me something about the 7 systems and maybe what they are, and maybe describe them. I mean, the one thing I noticed from, because of the magic of hearing it on QuickTime Player is that the first sound and the last sound seem identical.
I think they are, yeah.
Yeah, so there's some sort of weird arch there. Like it just sort of, it never ends really, it just kind of repeats, You can set these things to loop, right? So at a certain point you don't hear the join, right? It's just one long, endless loop.
7 systems times 50.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, here comes a little bit.
It looks like Russell was looking very seriously at the camera.
Really?
I think you were just looking at Laura.
Very seriously, though.
Russell, I have a question actually for you. Do you always choose the part that has Waldteufel?
No, I think it's just written for me. I always get Waldteufel, and I'm happy to play it whenever. I mean, I'm gonna try and have it in every single piece from here on out, even if it's just one little squeak.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to be a dope here. What's a Waldteufel?
It's also known as like a paste drum, but it's like it means forest devil, and it's like an open-ended cup-looking thing with a skin and a gut string, and you twist it, and it makes those kind of. It's like a little cuica, actually.
Like a cuica.
Yeah, it's like a little cuica with a handle. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Waldteufel. Okay.
I love the Waldteufel. I think that watching that clip there, it was a good section to play because there's so many of the sounds there are like me allowing myself to be an idiot, and I mean that in like allowing myself to just write the dumbest thing and be completely fine with it. And just a couple examples right there. The Waldteufel, I think it just comes out and like all of a sudden you guys are both spinning the Waldteufel and then you have to spin. There's a theater to it that I knew would would be there, and also having you have to pick it up and put it down. Like there's a whole theater to writing for percussion. But another one is like the pianists have this 2-note melody that's on either side, like all the way on the other side of the piano, and they're basically playing a pattern that is essentially the Fibonacci sequence, right? So it's like 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 up to 13 and then higher. And it's like that's not, I mean, it's so dumb, but I was at a point in my life where I needed to do that kind of stuff, and I don't know if it comes across as silly or as playful in the way that it is for me, but that's kind of how I'm approaching a lot of stuff in this piece, is just kind of allowing myself to not judge what I'm doing and just do it.
It doesn't sound dumb.
I don't think it's silly, but I definitely really find it theatrical. It's like we're a little bit like a wind-up doll, like especially, you look at the pianist, one moment we're signing up, doing one thing, and then very quickly, like sort of in a jarring connection of doing something totally different. I felt like that watching us playing.
Yeah, you are moving a lot around the stage a lot, or around your instrument a lot.
Also, I thought it was great to have like the two pianists doing the same thing at different times. You're thinking about stereo and thinking about space, and that you can see that on the score as I'm looking through it. But also, I don't know if people are hearing this in stereo, but I wasn't. But when I listened to it earlier, I was. And you began to see that that's also reflected in how you guys are playing some sort of MIDI. You, Ian, and Russell, and everybody is playing some sort of Ning, and Laura, you're all playing these MIDI doodads, right? That are creating. In this case, they're playing samples of all different kinds. There's this one point where there's this incredible sample. I don't know where that is, whether we're going to hear that or not. What is that, like a garden or a forest or something? It goes on for a really long time.
Yeah, there's frogs.
Frogs, okay.
Yeah, that were recorded. You've been to the Walden School, so they were recorded. There's a pond down at the bottom of the hill. And I actually have two pieces with those frogs that were written 10 years apart, that have two different recordings made 10 years apart. So that's I like those frogs a lot.
Do you want to hear those frogs?
You have to sneak up and record them, because if they detect you, they stop.
The issue was more that I was eaten alive by insects.
Right.
It's like I was like, it was, just like holding the boom, like, oh God, I gotta get out of here. Yeah.
But in terms of I'm hearing some of the same approaches, but allowing, it's not a question of a critique or anything, but it seems like there's a lot more expansiveness. This is a larger piece, and it has more space and room to roam, and the ludic aspect of it is very important, I think. The one when you had this sort of rotating doodad and all that.
Yeah.
It was lovely to see that, and I think it should be playful and joyous, and because what that does is that gives audiences a feeling that they can also play and empathize, and be a part of it in their own way.
Yeah, I think so. I think it opens things up. I mean, the piece does start like, it is very much like the other piece in the beginning. So it starts off with all these little objects that are rotating around each other, and whereas in the other piece, the last couple phrases get like longer and longer, so that until the last phrase like becomes this big like kind of pillow. This piece, the same thing happens, but it at one point it opens up, and then it just kind of like the rotations turn into, like, the thing about rotations is rotations can expand. They can expand, and they can pause, and they can kind of be this long thing, and the longer duration of a object in a rotation can be any duration, actually. And so this is like, once it gets going, it could be 30 seconds, or it could be a minute, or it could be 2 minutes, or it could be 3 minutes. And it really actually doesn't matter in the form of the piece what it is. So that's kind of something I'm taking advantage of here. And what happens in this piece is the rotations get longer and longer until they just kind of go off into the distance. And they're no longer rotating. They're becoming these objects that kind of flow into one another. So it's almost like making a contrast between these sharp cuts that are in both of these pieces and this like duration that can kind of expand over time. And I think actually I'll add just one more thing. I think both of these pieces, just to go on the emotional about the emotive quality, like a lot of my music is not like traditionally emotional music. It's about like a mind space or a meditative space or like a focus and awareness, but it's not about like romantic emotions. And both these pieces actually really are, which is, I don't know why. It has to do with writing for these amazing performers and who I have personal relationships with. But both these pieces are have that kind of narrative to them, which not all of my music does.
Can I challenge that for just a minute, the emotional part? Because I have personally found that both your improvised music, which I've been privileged to participate in, and these pieces, and other pieces that you've written, I really do induce strong emotions in people. I mean, not like you said, the romantic stuff,
Right.
That's maybe not even emotions, just ready-mades. But something maybe of the more authentic variety, where I feel that it's something I'm really feeling rather than something that's already there. It's a feeling that's being authentically and interacting with, your sounds are interacting, and it also interacting for me with memory. I mean, the way you're using the sampler, it has these sorts of like on-off kinds of things, or things that kind of repeat, like the way the first samplers used to do. I remember when Ron Quivela made a sampler out of a Kim 1 or wherever he was using 1,000 bytes of memory, and it just kept saying the same thing over and over. 515, 516, 515, 516. And it would just do this over and over. And this was like 1979 or something.
Right.
And so there was that retro sense of, which I really love in this music, where, electronic music at one point became, there's a technocratic side of it. People were very excited about making beautiful sounds and synthesis, and there were these amazing virtuosi, of all kinds. I mean, being at Earcom and Xavier Rodet, this guy was a virtuoso at making sounds, Farinelli and all that. But then this is a different kind of thing. It's like kind of down home kind of stuff,
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, part of that is it maybe goes to the issue of trying to make something that you want people to be able to play. So you do. Basically all they're doing is triggering things on and off. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that I was trying to create, and I think is that everyone has the same. Everyone has, so each of the keyboardists have a keyboard, and the percussionists have these drum pads. Mm-hmm. But they're all playing the same patch. So all those are, and I mean, talk about down home and old timey. I mean, it's basically MIDI, right? Like 4 MIDI cables going from these things. I mean, it's the only time I've ever had to deal with like MIDI channels in my life. And I've had other people play this, and the electronic person who hopefully has to be somebody to set it up. I always have to explain to them how MIDI channels work, because nobody
people don't use that anymore, right?
People don't use it anymore, and nobody knows. But it's actually really crafty, and it works. And so, but what's happening is like Russell will trigger the sound on, and Ning will trigger the sound off. Laura will trigger the sound on, and Ian will trigger the sound off. And so it takes the electronics and it kind of hopefully that fuses it with the ensemble, because they're all kind of contributing to it and making the sound be controlled by all of them. So rather than being the separate thing that's being triggered, it's actually like within their bodies and coming out from there.
I will
we
say,
just can't
Sam,
mess up.
No, you can't.
But like
I've never messed up. I've never heard it.
Thank you, George.
But Sam, I will say,
sample will keep going. It's just like, ugh.
When it's the forest one, it's nice. It is nice to set it up, though. I have to say, it's like, we need some speakers. We got those cool snare drum transducers, and literally, if you know how to, plug, what is it, the Motu like 4-channel thing, and then you're just feeding one thing into a computer, it can run off my old 2010 laptop, no crashing, nothing happening, and it's like easy. All you need is someone to go to the outside and be like, yes, it's balanced. Boom. Yeah. It's awesome.
In the geek world, is this a Super Collider thing or a Max thing, or what kind of thing?
It is Super Collider, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's all.
That in there.
Yeah, that tends to.
So have to know how to start the patch.
You just have to know how to start it. But once you know how to start it, then you're fine. Yeah.
But actually, hey, we've been getting some online chatter to hear the frogs. Let's
hear the frogs. I think
there's quite a bit of people voting to hear the frogs. So here we go.
Yeah, and Ian and Russell playing the parts of insects.
The ones biting you?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Those are the insects that are biting.
I wonder about... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering about playing this piece. Like, I feel like when we performed it, I had this very like intense performance vibe.
Yeah,
but I wonder
right?
if actually now knowing of its like playful, joyful, like place you came compositionally from, if we would approach it differently. I don't know.
Maybe we felt like we had to like really like go for it all the time, and so we're psyching ourselves up. But now we can be a little bit more relaxed. Or something.
Yeah.
Like it's. I mean, the score is very complicated.
I think that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's long.
And so, but to get it right, it's like 19 minutes or whatever. I mean, but that's the interesting part about it for me, which is that, under the hood, but when you is like super complicated and you have to be right on time and you see what the band is faced with and getting it to work. But at the level of the hearing it as a public piece, it does feel very relaxed. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, maybe you'd like to relax, but then maybe if you relaxed, it wouldn't work out the same way. I mean,
true.
I mean, maybe the piece is you managed to write something that sounds relaxed, and then the band, Yarn Wire, is playing it in a way that evokes relaxation. But then under the hood, it's fiendishly unrelaxed.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this, but this was probably like, I wrote this piece at the end of like one of the lowest points of my life, right? Like one of the like really like bummer. Like, although I was the summer I got married, that was great, right? But I was otherwise quite in a bad place, and I couldn't write. I was really like unable to compose this piece. I'd gotten a Fromm for it, so I was like, "Oh my god, I got to write a good piece." I think that could have been part of the thing, and a whole other aspect, cause and what happened, I think, was Sky and I went on our honeymoon, and we went to Turkey, and we had a great time, and then we went to Berlin, and in Berlin, I kind of wrote the whole piece in 2 weeks. And I think part of the piece is like coming out of that, like coming out of this kind of dark place. And so I think that's where a lot of the joy is like kind of overcoming it. And so like the last movement at the end is called Spree, and it's about like the Spree in Berlin, and going jogging every day down the Spree with my wife. And yeah, so there's that aspect to it too. I think there's, yeah, sorry, I'm gonna get a little emotional here.
See, I told you this is an emotional piece.
No. The previous section of the piece is called Good Morning Sunshine. You think, well, that's like the happiest part of the piece, but it's actually the saddest part of the piece because it's about a former student of ours who ended up taking his own life. And so a student who was probably the most joyful person I've ever met. And when you see somebody who's clearly this amazing beam of light as a human being, like honestly the most some people can just walk into a room and just like figure it out like in a moment and just be able to tell a joke and make everyone laugh. This is one of these people. And then to see this person then, you know, take their own life was really traumatic for a lot of people. So there's elements of that in this piece too, and that's the piece is dedicated to this person. So
okay. So I guess this is something that because for me, I didn't know that story, but still I find it in a lot of your pieces. I mean, you don't shy away from, you know, direct emotional, you know, to touch people in this way, you know. So I mean, that's how I look at it, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get to the dark place there, but you know.
That's okay.
That's okay.
That's the important stuff to talk about. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah.
And then you have the pun in your piece. You talk about going on a spree.
Right. So exactly. I mean, at the end, it's like a joke. It's like a spree. It's a spree. They are spreeing. Right?
It's really fun.
Well, actually, they're spraying.
They're like really going for it. And when we recorded it, I mean, if you the commercial recording that we made is just so over the top, and because like I think you guys recorded it and maybe you did it again and you were like trying to get it right, and I was like, no, don't try to get it right, just play it as absolutely fast as you possibly can. And don't worry about anything, and it's just that's what's on the tape, and it's super expressive because the music is just like super high energy. It actually doesn't have to be together. It needs to be like kind of needs to be a mess. Not that you were a mess, I'm saying, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
No, we were a hot mess.
That's near the end, right?
It's a good mess.
Do we have time to hear near the end?
I think so. Do we have that, Rob? Great. I think this is from the video, so not the commercial recording, but you know, it's getting at it. So, and here we go.
Yeah. What is that, Russell?
Waldteufel.
Oh, there's your pulse.
Oh yeah.
But no string. The string popped off, maybe from the piece.
I think, I think if you're gonna, like, I wrote that part, and it is quite hard. But I think one of the things that I do, hopefully, which is nice to the yarn wiries, is that there's a repeat in there. There's like, there's like all these notes, but there's like just a full repeat of like the whole section, and you don't even hear it because it's actually long enough. Yeah. So I think that's like, if you're going to write something crazy, you might as well have them play it again, because you have to practice it so much, and give them a chance to shine twice.
For us, it's like, all right, let's try again. Right. See if we can get it better the next time.
Yeah, I hear like my high school band teacher is like,
one more time.
The repeat has to be better, not worse than the first time. Nice.
I do. Sam, I love the transducers on this one too, on the snares.
Yeah, both these pieces have transducers, and this one, they're on these snare drums, and it's just so. Yeah, there they are.
Ooh,
so
nice
that's a nice snare drum. Do you have a picture of the transducer, or is that?
There's a video. You want to see? We could play what they sound like, but not the dancing one. The dancing one's online. Don't worry.
Not the dancing one, but
enough of the dancing.
No, here's another one.
Yeah.
And
what is that?
So it's just sine waves going through the snare, and so the transducer is on the snare, and it resonates the drum head, and then the snares are up, but they're loose, so they just really vibrate, and you can get all these different sounds just by change. It's two sine waves that will change frequency and then difference. So when the closer that it's basically heterodyning. So the closer they are, the slower the pulse, and the further they are, the faster the pulse.
And so it's not just a pitch you send in. It's not just that.
It's just two pitches.
Two pitches. I see.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's totally random. So it's not like they're playing that as a part, but it's always just triggering a random sound. And it just like, it always plays the low pulsy one when you want it to. I don't know why.
Yeah. I remember sometimes it would like really react.
Yeah. Which is cool. Hopefully, it's like gives this the computer a little agency in the system, and changes your perception as performers. So it just changes it a little bit for you guys.
It does sound like very modern at that time, also, because there was some electronic like dance music that was using those really low, like boo whoa whoa whoa, kind of things. I was like, yeah,
that's my wub wubs.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why you have to like keep. If you're an aging composer, is to keep teaching kids, because they'll show you the way.
Right.
That's.
Boy, you guys talk about aging pretty easily.
I think I'm literally wearing the same shirt in that video. So
you're wearing it right now.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, so that's one thing to think about. I mean, but that's the standard. Don't you guys kind of wear kind of similar stuff when you perform? Like, is it like not like a uniform, but something?
Concert clothes.
Concert clothing.
We've been talking about changing it up. We'll see.
Yeah, we always talk about it, but we always end up wearing the same thing.
Yeah. What do I have in my closet?
Right.
Well, before we
sorry,
wrap up, we actually had one more question for Sam.
Okay,
if just to get it in under the wire here, from because it came in earlier just when we were transitioning between the pieces, and this is from Pierre Alexander, who asks, Chagall's shape-making sense in the distance is a good metaphor for details and overall picture. I wonder how you deal with how long you stay on an icon. The size of the tile, is it workshopped with the band, or a more formalist top-down view of the movement?
Staying on like I think this is PA, and I don't fully get this question, but like staying on an object itself I think that's where it becomes improvisation, right? So if you have all these tiles, all these objects, then and all you're doing is rotating them around, then you can improvise with how you're rotating them. Then it basically allows me to improvise, because that's in the end what I want to do. And so then I have all this pile of stuff, and I can put things in order and then be like, oh yeah, that's how it goes, or then change the order after doing that. So it allows me to be really intuitive with the durations and and therefore with the larger form. So it's not hierarchical or structural or anything. It becomes improvisation.
You mean you're like an improvising composer?
Absolutely.
No, I mean, like, yeah, composing. Yeah. It's not so far-fetched. I mean, improvisation. There's some people. I think the famous example that I think of often, is Bruce Ellis Benson's book, The Improvisation of Musical Dialogue, where he talks about composition as being an improvisative act.
Yeah.
And so at some point, and I mean, unavoidably so.
Right.
Not something you have to justify, but in your case, it's, like you said, the intuition is happening right while you're putting things on paper.
Yeah, and I think I personally just kind of have to do it that way. If I get too caught in the weeds of deciding things, then I'm in trouble. So I mean, like the Stravinsky idea of like, what first thing the composer does is reduce what you're doing. So I've already reduced what I'm doing into these tiles, and then I can really start to play. So the compositional part is the reduction, and the play is the formal creation. And that's why that structure exists, and why it came out of writing software for performance. Because then it's like, in writing software for performance, I discovered these formal structures that I could then apply to my acoustic music.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for the questions, everybody who's been checking out this episode. But I think that's about all the time we have for today. So thanks so much to George and Sam for being here. And our next episode is going to air on Tuesday, the 27th. And we'll be speaking with Oyvind Torvind and Natasha Deals. And you can subscribe to our channel so you don't miss an episode. For all of you listening now, you can support this project by visiting our page on patreon.com. You can become a patron and receive cool bonus rewards like custom ringtones made by Russell and Laura, bonus playlists from artists like Sam Pluta, or download codes from our Yarnwire Currents series. So yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
That was great.
Thank you very much for including me in this. It's been great.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, George.
Wonderful. John Wire, fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you, George.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.